So I got requested to explain the Vocaloid song Kotoba Asobi by DJ Aneiro. Initially, I thought this was because people are interested in my explanations, but in actually looking up the lyrics of the song and going through it, I think it's because people wanted to torture me, but I did it. And it's actually a really great primer on various ways that you can do rhyme and wordplay in Japanese, so let's just go into it. So the song opens by kind of aggressively, potentially mocking you for not understanding Japanese and calling you a noob at the language. First of all then, rude, write that down. But this intro to the chorus, the hook, a very simple rhyme pattern that kind of breaks us into stuff that's going to happen in the song. So as you can see here, we start with honto ni and then wakaranka, which again is a sort of accusatory, potentially contemptuous version of do you understand? Then we move to nihongo niwaka nanka, or are you something like niwaka to nihongo? And here niwaka is slang that kind of means noob. The term means suddenly in like normal Japanese. Something like niwaka ame is a sudden rain shower. But it's used to mean noob because the idea is that you've suddenly joined the fandom. There are a few words for like a noob in Japanese, but this one is specifically somebody who hopped on due to like recent popularity or etc. In theory, in some contexts, you could translate it as like tourist instead. But importantly, what's happening here is that as you can see by these colors, we have a honto, hongo kind of pairing. Yes, you do go long vowel to short vowel, but that's very common in Japanese rhyme and Japanese wordplay. They often ignore vowel length, just like how Chinese wordplay often ignores tones. And then these are followed by ni. Indeed, the second one is preceded by ni as well, creating that kind of overlap. And then you have a consonant A, consonant A, consonant A, consonant A pattern. Importantly, though, this is breaking that pattern across word boundaries, because while wakaranka is its own thing, wakananka is not, right? So the bottom is, of course, nihongo niwaka nanka, but has nihongo ni wakananka to match the pairing. This then moves into 6 more lines, which again, basically just have interesting rhyme patterns. I'll show the lyrics quickly here, but I should say that honestly, the lyrics in this song don't matter that much. Like they're not nonsensical, but they are definitely willing to trade ease of intelligibility or even clear meaning for wordplay. All the lyrics in the song definitely have a I am good, you are not kind of vibe to them, and it's impressive that that vibe is maintained throughout the song given how complex some of the wordplay is, but there aren't like bars or metaphors. There's no kind of trying to strike a chord, but it's probably A minor kind of thing. The wordplay definitely takes primacy over like grammatical structures, etc. But here is the Japanese and the romanization of this, and I've tried to do some color highlights to point out the various things that are going on. So taking the nanka nanka that we had earlier, that's been moved to the front of 3 sentences in a row. And then these are followed quite quickly by a pattern that can be described kind of as a 2-mora word. Basically every hiragana is considered a mora here, followed by another 2-mora word that has a long u sound, which is then followed by a ni sound. So early on, of course, we have kando ni, which rhymes kind of with shouzo ni. And then there are some breaks here. Like the third line has shou no mi, and that is a short no, but actually, at least to my ears, they do extend it in the song to kind of force the rhyme. These ni's are then followed pretty immediately by a consonant A pairing. However, this is counted via syllables rather than mora. That's why baka works here. In haiku, that would be 3 mora, but when we're counting to beats, it's definitely syllable-based. There are, again, some exceptions. Like the first has ni hitatta. All the others are just E sound and then a, as in ni kaza or ni waka. But the general pattern goes through the 5 lines. We then regularly have a sound at the end of the lines, which again creates rhyme. This is probably the least interesting part of Japanese rhyme, and so it's not emphasized enough because like it's really easy to make the end of a Japanese sentence rhyme. Just end in a verb and it's going to have an u sound, right? But when it's working with all this, it definitely adds to it. And you have a kasan, sanman, konan thing down there at the bottom, which also creates those kind of links. Then finally, the last line just kind of rhymes with itself. Sonna konna, that's pretty easy. But that's, an interline rhyme, which is pretty fun. Then we get into the first real verse of the song. And here we have 3 different sets of wordplay. The first is actually rooted in a Japanese game called Shiritori. If you're not familiar, this is like a child's language game where someone says a word, and then you have to say a word that starts with the last sound of that word, and then the next person does the same. So if you said inu, for instance, I could say nurupo, and then someone could say puru. However, you lose the game if you repeat a word that's been said, or if you say a word that ends in n, because traditionally Japanese words don't start with n, so like the next person couldn't go. This game serves as the fundamental idea behind this first verse, because every single word plays Shiritori with the next word. And there are times, though, where the rapper says a word that ends in n, and then the song literally has like a record scratch back and it rewinds time so they can say another word. Let's just look at the first two lines, which you can see here. I've used a bit of color coding so you can see how they link. Note that I did this in Microsoft Word. So when I color coded the kanji, all the sounds in the kanji got color coded. It's not all the sounds, it's just the last sound and the first sound. But you can see, right, nigeru links to rupu, links to puraido, links to doranuma, links to warimichi, links to chiguhagu, links to guron, which is wrong because it ends in an n, so they go back and try again, giving us gugenka. Now, importantly though, to make this flow better, when they're actually singing, when they're actually rapping these lines, they don't repeat the sound. So it doesn't sound in the song like nigeru rupu, it's nigerupu. You don't hear puraido doronuma, you hear puraido doronuma. So the words are literally blended together based on that sound link. Now, as this advances across the next 5 lines, this pattern continues, but there's also some inner rhyme that's added to make kind of the thing more impressive. Again, the actual meaning here isn't super important. The English translation of the lyrics is very good, and it was very helpful to me. I'm very appreciative to the translator. But one thing it's doing in the English is actually adding like grammatical elements, and the Japanese is more just kind of like noun, 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 noun. Like the first line here is translated like this, which seems like a functional sentence, but the original Japanese is just saying plan, something not right, singular point. And I'm not saying the lyrics are lazy at all. This is actually quite a common thing in like Japanese rap, hip hop. One of my favorite Japanese bands is the experimental black metal band Psy, and on their last album, it was actually very hip hop influenced. And there's a whole section on one of the songs that rhymes, but it does this just by being like noun, 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 noun. Like these lines here have a rhyme that goes from mono to ie to nie to mono to chie to goto, and that's fine, but it is just kind of like phrase, word, phrase, word. But when we look at all these words together in the whole context of the 5 lines, you can see that beyond just continuing the Shiritori game that we've seen earlier, there are a bunch of inner rhymes. For instance, at the top there in the first line, kadai gets rhymed with kennai in the same area. The first 2 lines connect with an iki sound, and then atari batari, of course, kind of rhymes with itself. The first mistake, where they say kikaku hin, ending on the n, then allows the next rhyme to start with kikaku again, different word, but same pronunciation, so you get kind of an inner rhyme. And then the second error, where they say tokuiten, that mistake actually allows them to start a rhyme in the next line because they restate it with tokuige, which then combines with geneki. But again, we aren't double pronouncing this, so you hear it as tokuigen, which rhymes, of course, with tokuiten. Clever. And then you have an urakata utakata rhyme between the last 2 lines, with the entire verse ending on a mi sound. So again, while I have said that the meaning is a bit vague here and there, the fact that all of these words link together is impressive, and the pronunciation where the 2 words blend, such as battari and risosu becoming battari sosu, is really fun. After this, we move into the second wordplay pattern. And what's kind of cool here is, just like the first one, we start with a really simple type of wordplay, and then as it goes on, that wordplay gets expanded into something even more impressive. Here though, the wordplay is just repeated sounds. So as you can see here, we start with the mi that ended the last line, and then after that, all of the lyrics are made by just repeating the same 2 sounds over and over and over in pairs. So the mi that we ended with starts the mi on the new line, and then after that, we immediately go into kiki shishi nini kuku, right? And as you can see by the highlighting that I've done here, these aren't the normal breaks for words. So a lot of these pairs happen within words or breaking up across words. The places where these pairs happen are not where you would normally stop saying the word. And then additionally, the vowels are pretty consistent, with there's only 3 vowels being used throughout this entire passage, which is where the colored highlights are, the little bars. And so you can see we go from E to U to E to A to U. And another thing that I think is really cool is that in the video for this, these links are shown sometimes by just like, the same hiragana touching, but when the pairs involve part of a kanji, the visuals actually split the kanji into 2 or 3 pieces, and each piece of the kanji is given a hiragana, which is a very fun way of looking at kanji. For instance, shitataru is split into its left water radical, the middle bit, and then the right bit. And so the water radical is combined with the kanji for child, which is read as shi, so you get shi and shi together. The middle of the kanji then links to the bottom of the kanji because both of those are given the, quote, reading of ta. And then the final ru, which is of course written in hiragana, is matched with the left half of the kanji read as rui, which is a really fun visual. It's a fun way of visualizing this sort of play without going full hiragana like we saw with the earlier Shiritori game. The second part of this verse then moves into 3 lines which take this basic, I'm going to repeat sounds over and over again, but extends how complex the sounds are and actually has 3 different sound sequences working within each other. So here's the visual again. The blue boxes again show you where in theory like you could pause, where the kind of word breaks are. But as you can see by the different colored boxes, there's overlap. Just looking at the first line, we start with kaku kaku. So we're doing 2 mora pairs this time instead of 1. However, the final ku in kaku kaku also starts a pattern of kuto kuto. And then this, in its final sound, starts a pattern of toma toma, which itself opens up the pattern of maru maru. There's then a jirushi, which just kind of floats there, that's fine. And then we begin a new pattern of shiwa shiwa. Except it ends in han, which again is an error, even though we're not playing Shiritori anymore. So the song does the pullback loop again. And shihan is replaced with hataraku. Now, yes, that's shiwa shiha, but again, they're the same hiragana, right? This hataraku starts a tarai tarai pattern, so 3 mora, which is itself part of a raiba raiba pattern, which itself is part of a ibare ibare pattern, etc., etc., etc. These patterns are incredibly complex, and it's very impressive not only that they work within each other like this, but that they do kind of cross word boundaries and even lines until eventually we end with just a final ko. The visuals for this in the video are also really cool because again, we're dividing kanji based on the idea that like each part of the kanji is involved in the sounds. So in the screenshot you're looking at here, for instance, you can see the middle and the right of the kanji hataraku being split, with one getting the ta reading and the other getting the ra reading. I added the romanization there, which both match with hiragana, but then the ra is followed by what looks like a mu, but that's actually the right side of harao, which here is read as barai because of what it connects to. And so because you have ha ra right in that kanji, the second half of the kanji is read as ra, giving us ra 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 in that pattern. It's pretty clever. And then we finish the first verse with a really high-speed rap part. And this honestly, in my opinion, is the least complicated and kind of interesting wordplay here. It's also the point where I think the lyrics are the least functional. But if you look at it here, you can see there is definitely some rhyme, etc. The first, third, fifth, and seventh passage all have an E sound as their second sound, linking together that way. Ri, I, ni, shi, right? And then the endings kind of have a bit of a link because you have do, to, and then you repeat the D sound with da, no, repeating the O sound. Da then rhymes with ka, but then we switch to ba. And then we bring back do, although it's a longer sound, with ga, which of course rhymes with ba. And then actually we're playing Shiritori again. To, to, no, no, ba, ba, ga, ga, right? And the first 2 lines on the right have a ritsuku connection, which is then reduced to ri in the third. And then finally, at the very end there, you have a long line where every single vowel is an O. But the actual point of this entire section is that the first letter of each of these breaks spells out the word kotoba no obake ga, or like the ghost of words. And then that links to the ending, which translates as like deep in the heart. So like the ghost of the words is deep in my heart. This is made very explicit in the video. We then end with the bridge, which is pretty fun, although it's pretty simple to explain because it's just a palindrome. It's a long sentence that can be read both ways, and what's impressive about this one is how long it is. If you look at the official lyrics, they look like this, and the palindrome nature here is kind of hidden because it happens in the middle of the second line rather than like at the very, very end, as it's within the line furu prufu, and it's in that pu that's in between them. Because let's start with just this. Furu, pu, right? Rufu. Going backwards, furu, pu, rufu. It goes both ways. If we zoom out and see the whole thing, it looks like this. And as you can see, it's a palindrome. When you read this though, make sure that you're reading it in the Japanese way, which is that the palindromes are mora-based, not letter-based. So for instance, the first 5 on the left there, you can see are read as shisuru, shichi. And when we go backwards, that means that instead of saying something like ikishish, we read them as individual mora, shisuru, shichi. And it's just impressive that something of this long can be repeated both ways. That's what it is. I don't mean to sound dismissive. It's really impressive, but it is a palindrome. That's the only explanation there. There's no like rhyme or anything else that's really going on that's that interesting. After we leave this, we go back to another version of the chorus or the hook where they again call you a noob, which is again rude. And then this leads into the second full verse, which is basically performed at breakneck speed. This is actually my favorite verse of the song because it is the verse where the lyrics actually matter the most. They actually feel like Japanese with real grammar behind them. And I think that the rhyme pattern is incredibly impressive. The speed of it, like, whatever. Like, let's be honest, it's not hard to make a computer rap fast.
What is my purpose?
You rap fast. But the actual pattern that runs throughout this is really cool. So we start though with just Ni Hao Ma because this is a Vocaloid that was developed for Chinese songs, so that's fine. And then we have a quick little throwaway rhyme line that you can see here, kind of internal rhyme like imi, hibiki, kimi. Then we switch to A and U transitions, wakaru, aruka. I should note here that that aruka thing in katakana, that's one of the features that's been used in a long time in Japanese media to show like non-fluent Chinese versions of Japanese. There's a whole book on it. I'm honestly not super delighted to see it here. I wouldn't say it's like super discriminatory or anything like that, but it's, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we then jump into the lyrics, and basically throughout the entire verse performed again at that high speed, we have an 8-syllable pattern. And that pattern is usually consonant, but basically a, and then a-u-ri, a. And that repeats over and over and over again, yet the general lyrics are pretty coherent. So you can see the color patterns here, but look, I'm just gonna read this out loud in very like boring 4/4 times so you can see the pattern in action. Hana kara wa murida kara mada pakurida ga kata ha akushi ara kata kata zuita. It sounds better in the song. There are some like errors or fudges, I guess. The ha that I've highlighted in purple, I don't actually think that's pronounced, just to kind of skip it out there and make sure we get 4 ahs in a row instead of 5. Be the judge for yourself. But it's really impressive. As you can see, I've tried to do it with the color coding and by like highlighting the kanji and stuff like that. It's very hard to do this in Microsoft Word. But you can see how a lot of these patterns break across kanji, they break across words, and yet the pattern is really maintained basically until the very, very end, where we instead get a 5-ah pattern instead. The wara, or like LOL there at the end, then links to a gasp of ah, which continues into the second part of this verse. Which honestly, it's the same thing. It's the same pattern, you can see it there. Tama kakushi tama mana kama uchi toma tama tazamuki ka. Throughout, until at the very, very end, we get the final line where everything continues, and finally at the end, karanani kind of ends the sentence, breaking the song, and indeed the song breaks at that point. After this, we get a repeat of the palindrome and a repeat of the chorus, but then finally we get a final version of the chorus, which again, just has some kind of cool rhyming patterns in it. We start with the same thing we saw earlier, right? Nihongo wa karanka. But then unlike earlier, this is actually continued into the bars that follow. And in a way that again crosses lines in a fun way, as we have taranja and kanjanka rhyming with karanka, right? You then have also rhymes within these rhymes because the third line starts with kankuwa, which of course rhymes with junkuwa. We're not saying junk or. And throughout this as well, kind of moving diagonally, we have honto with hongo, and we saw that before, but then also tondo, zengo, and manabo. In the final 3 lines, then you just have like a dashi-dashi pair, which is fine. And then an ijo, which again links us to that something o sound pattern that we saw before, and a daki-n, which links to dashi, etc. The final line, as with the final line in the first version of this, then has a lot of rhyme within itself. Instead of sonna konna, it's sonna okonna, which is a shortened variant of okoranaide, don't be angry. And then ikinuki and teinuki, of course, rhyme because it's literally the same sound. So all in all, there you go. Thank you for assigning me this song. It was really interesting. Again, it doesn't have the kind of metaphor-based wordplay that a lot of people look for in rap, and that, I do appreciate very much. But it is a really good kind of crash course in showing the various ways that Japanese people have devised ways to make rap interesting in a language where, again, it's very easy to rhyme kind of accidentally. The rhyming here and the wordplay here is not accidental, it's very intentional, and it shows a lot of thought into ways to make rhyme that is interesting, even in a language where, every sound you make, arguably, has a 1 in 5 chance of rhyming with the next sound you make. If you'd like to know more about the history of the development of rap rhyme in Japanese, I have an hour-long interview with a researcher in Japan who studies this on my YouTube channel that you can check out. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made it evident that I am not Niwaka at Japanese, despite what this mean lady says, and I will see you in the next video.